The highway code is important because the highway code is guidance, the rules of the road and often the laws of the road. Because many people say the highway code is just guidance in general and it doesn't matter if you comply with it or not. But that's wrong for two reasons, very important reasons, and in reverse order of significance. The first being, if the highway code says you must not do something, then it's backed up in law, regulations, and by breaking those, you are breaking the law. And the highway code is just guidance on how you are breaking the law if you contravene the rule of you must not do X, Y, or Z. And secondly, the highway code is guidance on what you should and should not do. So you should do this, you should not do that. And the reason that's important is because that is what barristers such as myself and courts will take into account. If you've broken those guidance rules to say you should not do this or you should leave this amount of space, if you are accused of either a road traffic offence or you're party to a collision and you're being blamed for that collision and the arguments against you are from the highway code. So an argument that you are liable for that collision are possibly because you didn't comply with the highway code. Now, this came about in a conversation on X. I still can't find myself feeling just right calling it X just yet, but X is now the new Twitter. There was a conversation over on X where it said here, this bicycle riding motorist, which goes by the username of Mr. Happy Cyclist, said the following: just reported this driver 50 centimetres away at 22.5 miles an hour. This was without doubt deliberate punishment pass because the driver didn't like my correct road position. Pausing on the latter point for a moment, the correct road position could either be for a cyclist over on the left or in the middle of the lane. Lane, not road, I make the distinction. But in the middle of the lane could be perfectly fine if that makes the cyclist more visible, therefore safer, so other drivers need to take the time and the space to overtake safely. That's what he means by the correct road position. Now, he said he reported this driver for this close pass, which looks like a punishment pass to me. I can show you a close-up of that. It is easily within, from the handlebar to the side of the car, easily within 50 centimetres, and in my view is a dangerous pass. Someone responded, and which is the reason for this video in the first place. Someone responded, and no criticism, this is an educational discussion, so I'm not having a go here. I don't do that. Unless someone has a go at me, then it's a different story, then the gloves are off. But Adam Jones said, I don't understand how the police can prosecute this. The highway code states 1.5 metres is a guide. I'll come back to that in a moment. If it's set in law, then it says must, not should, or guide. I agree it's a close pass. I'm glad about that. But with the highway code being so ambiguous, not so sure about that one, and open to interpretation, kind of, I'm not surprised it happens. And so then a whole conversation ensues, and I decide to do this video. So just another look at this photograph for a moment. You can see that this is definitely a close pass. Obviously, I will link the tweet in the description below. This is educational in nature, this video, rather than anything else. When we go to, let's go to actually the highway code first, as to whether or not this really is just a guidance or how this is supposed to be taken. Now, we're talking about here in Rule 163, overtake only when it's safe and legal to do so. That should be obvious. You should, so it is guidance in the sense, but is it ambiguous? You should not get too close to the vehicle you intend to overtake. That goes for those drivers that get right up behind you before they're overtaking and they're snaking behind you before they overtake. You should use your mirrors. You should not assume you can simply follow the vehicle that's overtaken in front of you. You should move quickly past the vehicle you're overtaking. Doesn't mean you can break the law, by the way, with the speed limits, but you should allow plenty of room. You should move back to the left as soon as you can. You should take extra care. You should give way to oncoming vehicles. You should only overtake on the left if the vehicle in front is signaling to turn right. That goes hand in hand with another rule that you shouldn't move to the left to overtake, which is a subject for another video I've done many times before. But moving to the point of this video, you should give motorcyclists, cyclists, horse riders, horse-drawn vehicles, at least as much room as you would when overtaking a car. As a guide, so it is a guide, but is it ambiguous? At least 1.5 meters when overtaking cyclists at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. And give them more space when overtaking at higher speeds. Now, assuming that we take this as read from this post, that it was 22.5 miles an hour, and it was this close, it should be at least 1.5 meters. So even as a guide, this is certainly not ambiguous. This is leave at least 1.5 meters when overtaking of speeds up to 30 miles an hour. Take extra care, overtaking cyclists, etc. Wait behind the motorcyclist or cyclist if it's unsafe or not possible to meet those clearances. So if you can't overtake this bit here that you can see, if you can't overtake with these clearances, 1.5 meters, you should wait behind. Now, if you as the driver have put a cyclist in danger like this, or worst, you've collided and knocked them off, they've got injured, or even worse, which there are fatalities, sadly, of cyclists from drivers who are overtaking without enough space and they collide. If you can't do that with at least 1.5 meters, you should wait behind. So I humbly suggest that this is not in the slightest bit ambiguous. It is absolutely clear. In speeds of up to 30 miles an hour, you leave at least 1.5 meters. If this goes to court, I can assure you as the barrister, I will point this out in cross-examination to you as the driver and say, take a look at this photograph. You would agree that this is not 1.5 meters. You would agree that this is not more than 1 meter. And potentially, to be more accurate, more like 0.5 meter. You would agree with that. And then you would also agree that the highway code here says you should leave at least 1.5 meters, up to 30 miles an hour. And you would agree that you were doing up to 30 miles an hour. And you would also agree that the highway code says that you should wait behind if you don't meet those clearances. And so you would also agree, it follows that if you don't meet those clearances and you can't leave 1.5 meters, you should not have overtaken. You would agree with that. And if you don't agree with that, by that point, you look unreasonable anyway. If you do agree, you've admitted the offence of a close pass. Not that there's no specific offence of a close pass. I'm going to come back to the law in a minute. But you would agree that it's a close pass. So if you agree with all of that, then I would say you agree. So you agree that it is a close pass. Now, a close pass not being defined in law, it does come under careless and inconsiderate driving. A bog standard Section 3 Road Traffic Act offence, which is if a person drives a mechanically propelled vehicle on a road or other public place without due care and attention or without reasonable consideration for other persons using the road or place, he's guilty of an offence. Reasonable consideration. In my follow-up in cross-examination, I would say to you, you would agree that reasonable consideration of other road users includes cyclists. You would further agree that reasonable consideration of other road users, including cyclists, would mean complying with the rules and the guidance in the highway code. Again, if you don't agree with that, you appear unreasonable to the court. If you do agree with that, you're essentially agreeing that you've driven without reasonable consideration, because this is in breach of those rules. This is why the highway code is important. This is why, whether it's guidance, should or must, it is all important. And so I say all this not to lecture you. That is never my intention on this channel. My intention is only ever to help you, the drivers and the cyclists alike. I drive and I cycle, so I fall on both sides of that argument. I, as a driver, understand how it can be frustrating when a cyclist is slowing up the traffic. I understand that. But also as a cyclist, I understand how when you are cycling and you get drivers overtake you with this small of a distance between you, it's terrifying. It's terrifying because if you get hit, you end up on the floor at whatever speed you're doing and potentially underneath another vehicle. And we've seen in news items in the last few months, sadly, people end up underneath vehicles and it is a fatal collision. So I say all this not to lecture you. I say this to assist you, to help you to understand, and ideally to make the roads a safer place. And so please don't get frustrated with each other. And when you consider these highway code rules, whether they are guidance or a strict must not law, which is highlighted by the highway code, please take them seriously. Please consider them as you would consider driving safely with other road users in mind. I hope that's been useful. I hope it explains why the highway code is more than just a set of guidelines that you can pick and choose whether to agree with or not. If you do find that useful, please do consider hitting the like button and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.